Welcome to the Lighthouse. I'm your host, Ryan Hopenhauser, and this is the show for business leaders to unlock their full potential. Together, we're going to explore the tools, strategies, and insights that you can use to navigate the complexities of the entrepreneurial mind, maintain your mental wellness, and elevate your leadership to take your business and your life to the next level. Each episode, we're going to bring you powerful conversations with various leaders across multiple industries who have the mindsets, strategies, and tools that they've used to transform their own journey. So whether you're here to lead your team better, grow your business, or take your life in a completely new direction, this is the show for you. Let's illuminate your path forward. Welcome back to the Lighthouse. I am joined here today by Marcus McDuffie. He's the founder of AION Training. It is a trailblazer in the fitness industry and really in developing what I would call a client-centered gym business. We were just talking about community before we jumped on the show, and I think that Marcus has done a great job of developing that in his facility. Today, he's going to share his journey about how he got into entrepreneurship and really got started to build that community. And outside of that, just really the mental strategies he's developed to overcome those obstacles that you deal with in entrepreneurship. So if you are a business owner and you're going through that grind, it's going to be a good episode as he shares some of the resources, tools, and insights that he's gained over the years in business. So welcome to the show, Marcus.
Yeah, what's up, Ryan? Thanks for having me on, my man. Yeah, it's been quite the journey of entrepreneurship for a head case that now is a little less head casey.
I think as entrepreneurs, we all are, right? I feel like entrepreneurship is really just high risk decision making and risk taking. You know, like you're just taking a lot of high risks that other people don't, and you got high risk decisions. So yeah, you kind of got to have, what do people say, a screw loose, or I just honestly think you got to be different. It's not, there's no right or wrong or good or bad. You're just a little bit different in the way that you think, which is awesome. So tell me a little bit about you, how you got into entrepreneurship and kind of where that started for you.
Yeah, man. I think the first initial little inkling was for me, like my parents during the recession, they both went from like working for corporations to, being laid off and then going and starting their own businesses. Right. Mm-hmm. So I kind of saw during that time, like hey, working for someone else, there's no control in that, right? I don't really have a say in like my destiny and where things go. In the grander scheme, I really don't either way. But even in that piece, that was a big piece of it. So I saw how they moved. I saw a lot of just how hurtful that time was and how hard that time was for them. So I knew for myself, like as I went to college and things like that, that I put it away for a while. But always the thought of working for someone else felt like it was just a means to an end, and then I would have to go do my own thing at some point. So yeah. I went to school over at Occidental down in LA, and I was there for pharmacy, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to be a pharmacist. Like, this is how I actually change the world. I go into pharmacy and help people with their drugs. And I interned at a pharmacy. It was absolutely one of the worst jobs I've ever done. It was so boring. Everyone was so dry. And so basically for the next 3 years, I floated through school with no real idea what I was going to do. I was in kinesiology, but I didn't know what I was going to do with it. And so this is the first like kickoff of my like real journey into the fitness world. Was after my junior year, I quit football, and all of a sudden I find myself alone, right? Because a lot of my friends, basically all my friends, were on the team. And so when I quit, it was just me. So for the first time, I'm this younger dude and I'm alone, and all I do is I go to the gym like 2 or 3 times a day just so I have people around me. Fast forward some through, I ended up like just getting a job as a personal trainer. I was like, all right, I'm just going to do this until I figure out what the hell is next. And then, the guy quit after 6 months, and he goes, hey, you've shown me enough in these 6 months where I trust you with my people. And, so I went down the road, subleased the spot, and ended up taking on like 25, 30 clients at that time, like 22, and that was kind of like,
dude, that's crazy. It's the sequence of events. Like my wife and I, we've been talking a lot just about like consciousness and how like things happen, and the idea that like we're so close to exactly what we want, but we just don't know it. And it can be a moment like that, like you just said, like, hey, I met this person, I started working for him, and then they're just like, hey, you want all my clientele? Yeah. Like, and again, like it gives you that jump start, and it's like that's kind of like that sign or that signal of like, hey, here's the door to walk through next. So really, really cool that happened for you.
Yeah, and I think that's like a big thing that I've like just leaned more into as I've gone along is so much of the stuff, like there is nothing I could have done to be like, oh yeah, I chose this place with this guy, and like all these events are going to happen where he moves to Arizona, So a lot of times really is, there's a luck to it, and there is just like an understanding of, hey, like we're going to be okay at the end of this thing. As long as I'm alive, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah, and you mentioned to pharmacy. My brother is a pharmacist. And
sorry, no disrespect.
No. Well,
because he just quit. So,
Oh.
so it's just crazy to see, like, you know, he went into pharmacy, same thing, thinking that was going to be the big thing. And as he got deeper into that world and saw kind of the corruption and like really he wasn't helping the problem, he was actually creating it, that for him ethically and morally, he couldn't do it anymore. So yeah, and he quit because of that. So I'm glad to hear that you got to see it first and like that wasn't the right path for what I wanted to do. Because yeah, a lot of times you don't see it, like you don't see the inner workings of it. I always think of that, and I'm sure you can relate in the gym world, is clients always say that they want to become a trainer. They're like, oh, how do you do this? I want to go do it. I think I can do this. But then they get behind the scenes and they see that it's not working out and just having fun in the gym and eating food. Like it's actually sacrificing parts of what you do for helping other people. And a lot of people don't want to do that. So it's just nice that you got to experience it early on and make that shift.
Yeah, man. I think it was, once again, just such a blessing. I had a dude that lived by me that, you know, he was a pharmacist and just got to go into that. But yeah, I'm glad your brother's out, and I hope you can find like the next step that kind of brings him closer to, you know, where he feels called to.
I'm just thinking you got into kind of your like a business right away of clientele. All of a sudden you got a flood of people in. From a leadership standpoint at such a young age, what, like looking back at that time, what were some of the things that you maybe had to like learn right away or figure out on your own? Because now you have people looking up to you.
Yeah, you know, I think that honestly was one of the toughest things of that time was, you know, I'm this 22-year-old kid and I'm here coaching like these, you know, CEOs, like all these people. Our main thing was people over 40. And I'm just coaching all these people. And the whole time, you know, that imposter syndrome was just like yelling at me. How are you going to tell them what to do? You don't know. You don't know anything. These people have done all of this and you're just getting started, right? So there was all this heavy negative mental chatter, right? That made me showing up for these people way harder than it really needed to be, but also just having respect for that time, you know? So I think for me, it was just kind of living with the imposter syndrome. And, it kind of inspired like our big slogan now, which is just show up. Because for me, it was like, hey, I feel like an imposter every single day I go to this thing. I feel like an imposter every single time I try to tell my clients something, but I'm trying to help these people and I'm just going to keep showing up and showing up and showing up until I feel more confident in what I'm doing, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's such a great point that you talked about with like that mental chatter, and you can't show up as who you need to be for them. And I think like what was coming to me in my head as you said that was like, we try so hard in business ownership, and like when you're leading a team or you're leading clients, like you try so hard to be someone you think you need to be. When I think like at the end of the day, the people that you're leading just want you.
I think that's such a huge piece because even I think I first started to really, really notice that when I got into my first mastermind, and the person who led it, amazing, amazing person, but they were basically Superman, right? And for me, like, I can't be Superman because I know everything that I'm going through. So I can't be Superman. And so there was a disconnect. And I started to see like, man, like people don't want gurus. People don't want this person to be in front that's perfect, that, like you said, they think trainers, we're ripped all year and, we eat healthy 24/7. And so they can't connect to that. So I think for me, like a big thing of when we really started to grow a stronger community, a stronger just raving fans, it was a lot of when I started to drop that and be like, hey, this is actually who Marcus is here. I got into fitness because I was depressed and lonely and it helped change my life. And that's when I saw a lot of the people that I was working with ask me more questions, look at me more as a leader, and just kind of also feel safe and opening up themselves, which is huge for, even just the transformation side of what we do.
And I think that's such a great point to hit on, like that humility and just like the authenticity, because like you and I are similar in that regards. Like our whole program when I had my gym was Take Back Your Life, and it was built around me because my whole thing was that I was a lonely, depressed, very unhappy individual, and the way that I got myself out of that state was through fitness. So to your point, a lot of times people come in and they look up to that trainer, they look up to that coach and like as the superhero. And for me, I tend to be a little more honest. So when I hit them with, hey, just so you know, the only reason I ever worked out was because I hated myself and I was just trying to find a way to love myself again. They're like, what? Like, like what do you mean? Like you weren't getting ripped and trying to look good for the beach? And like, no.
You were bodybuilding your whole life?
But I think really that's what makes great coaches is you know what it's like to be in that place, and you don't want someone else to have to go through it. So you give them the tools, the strategies, the insights to avoid it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's such a great gift that we have, because I think a lot of people that come to this industry, they join the industry, especially like in our realm, which is more so working with adult clients, because they want to give back. They want to help people. And I think a lot of that is also tied to, hey, like I've seen how this thing has changed my life and
Mm-hmm.
I want to share that. And it'd be a failure on the coach's part to not tell people that story. It's the story that kind of shows people, hey, like what you can do through this, right? So you can't just jump to the golden parts where you were shredded the whole way. So yeah.
Yeah, so thinking of like just some of that mental chatter that you talked about, are there any strategies or any things that you can think back that you did for yourself to help get out of that and overcome what maybe a lot of people would call imposter syndrome?
I think for me, the worst part really was during COVID. A lot more isolation, a lot more me just being alone with my thoughts and realizing how painful they are, right? Like to the point where, I think like self-awareness is one of the best skills you can have as a leader, right?
Yeah.
The ability to look yourself in the mirror and go, hey, like where do I need to improve? And also at the same time, where am I doing really well, right? Like there has to be a balance of two of those things, because being all negative or all positive are both delusional,
Mhm.
right? So I think for me, it was just kind of seeing, hey, like instead of why these negative thoughts are slowing me down, what am I actually trying to protect here? And then going from there, right? So for example, a big thing I used to do early on in my career is I would put together a great marketing plan. I would call all these people. I would write all the emails. I would have all the posts ready, and I just wouldn't schedule all of them. And then, wouldn't do as well. And I realized over time that that was my like protection. So it's kind of, one, like just being aware of, hey, anytime that you fall short of where you want to be, don't just, I think for the longest, I used to just go, oh, that's just who I am, and then it's this mark on you. But it kind of shifted from that to, all right, hey, like what happened? Right. And
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing that everyone can do is as an entrepreneur, like you are going to fail. You're going to quote unquote fail. But being able to look at it and go, hey, like what happened? What did I learn from that? And how can I apply that going forward? WWA, what was that? What did I learn? And how can I apply that? And just continue to look at that over and over. And I think that was a big shift for me, was going from I didn't coach this client in the best way, or hey, like I messed up this business decision. I did that because Marcus isn't good enough in that way. And going from that to, hey, I didn't do this. Okay, cool. It makes sense. This is my third year in business. I'm learning. What did I learn? And then being able to run with that forward. And it just completely shifts the way that you look at yourself, and goes to like one of my favorite books, Mindset by Carol Dweck, which is also a bit
Mhm.
of a turning point. But just this whole thing of any skill out there to some degree can be or can be learned, instead of you're just static here.
I love the way that you change that perspective around how you view it within yourself, though, because a lot of times people do, like, they view failure as this like definitive thing, as I failed at this thing, which means I am now bad and maybe am not worthy. But I was actually just reading, Andy McCloy recommended this book to me, A Pocket Full of Happy Money.
Mm.
And it talks a lot about quantum physics, consciousness, and how everything gets related in a lot of philosophical concepts. And one of them is around the ideas of success and failure, and that failure is actually success, because failure is a succession of moving forward. And the only thing that stops you from succeeding is stopping. So as long as you keep moving forward, or like failing forward, as you might have heard it, like you're going to get to the point you want to go to. That really just changed for me the other day. I'm like, wow, like, it is success, because the goal is to get knowledge. And once you get knowledge from failing, you learn what to do and you fix it. And you keep going forward and forward and forward. So yeah, like just understanding those little things is so big, because otherwise you beat yourself down on your head.
Exactly. And that's like, I think that's where a lot of the danger is too, is when you start to associate like those failures, which I definitely did, for a long time, and associating those failures with who you are as a person, it then makes it harder to do task and take jumps on ideas. And it's harder than it needs to be, because it's no longer like, hey, I'm a person learning. You're like, oh, well, I'm this fucked up person, and because of that, I have to work twice as hard to do this thing. And it's just never helpful. Like you said beautifully there, everything makes me greater. It's one of my best sayings. Everything makes me greater. It doesn't matter if it's a loss, if it's a failure, if it's a great thing, if it's somewhere I tried hard and it just didn't work out. It all makes me greater. And that's been probably like the biggest shift I've had mindset wise in the last 2 years.
Nice. Can you think back of like what really kicked that off for you?
That's a great question. There's been so many big moments like that, but I think I want to say in 2020, right? I was figuring out how to open the business, went through the end of a last relationship, and in that, a lot of like solo introspective time, was thinking about hiring my first employees. And so in this, like, there's so much change going on, right? We're still especially out here in Cali, we were in COVID till like 2022.
Yeah.
Like we were in this thing. And so I had so much change going on where I really was like just in the most unhappiest spot that I've been since college when I first kind of got into fitness. And with that, like I just hit a point where I was like, hey man, like we have to change, like I don't want to live this way. I don't want to live in this mental box of, everything is procrastinated. Everything is self-sabotage. Like, yes, I'm trying to do these things. I want to help these people and I just can't. I think that was really it. I was at Luca's, you know Luca? So I was up at his Vigor Ground talk and Steve Krebs gave a talk about his father who had just passed away. And I don't know what happened, but it clicked for me during that moment of, oh, I've gotten disconnected from the real goal. Like my real goal and the reason I got into all of this was to help people get out of pain, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, whatever it may be. And I was so much in my own self that it was pulling me away from doing that. And I just remember seeing that. And I went outside and I cried on the stair steps for like 30 minutes straight, like bawling, crying, so powerful. And I really do think it was that. It was like the selflessness of being like, hey, I want to give back to these other people. I need to show up in this way. I can, if I'm actually going to be about this, I can't continue to let these things hold me down. And, off of that, like I got more serious about therapy. I joined like a money 12-step program to get some more clarity about that. And then really just got a lot deeper into the world of reading like things like Michael Singer, Untethered Soul, Eckhart Tolle, like Alan Watts, like all that things that changed that. Because I really do think, my current mastermind leader, he always says like the business success is tied to the psychology of the owner. And my psychology was it was in a bad spot. And so it's beautiful to see like, over the last 2 years, we went from around like $2,000 or $200,000 in 2022 to over 530 in 2024. And a lot of that has been that same timeline of, hey, I'm taking care of myself. I'm getting the way that I look at the world and everything shifted. And because of that, I can give that into my staff. I have more space to give to clients and I have more space for the business too.
I'm so happy you said that for like selfishly, because like that's my thesis is that there are no business problems. There's only people problems. And any business problem that you have is a manifestation of your own personal problem. Like, so like there's no business problem to fix. You just got to fix you. And when you fix you, you'll stop popping up in the business with all those problems.
Exactly, man. And I think that goes back to that self-awareness piece because you got to be able to look yourself in the face and go, hey, where am I actually falling short? Where is my ego or whatever else getting in the way? Like one for me, and I think for a lot of coaches as well out there is they feel like they have to be the smartest person on their staff or they have to be the one that controls everything. And for me, like I love control because control is safety. But I think, now I love how much my team gives advice to me. Sometimes I'll have a problem with the business and I'll just bring it to one of the meetings and go, all right, what do you all think? Right. And I don't know. And we come out of that with a great solution for our members and for the business. So I think there's all these things of, just stepping back, like get into therapy, get into journaling, get into meditation, get into just being with yourself and seeing what's going on there. And I guarantee like the more you dive into that, the easier this process, this game of business really becomes.
Yeah, dude, like I saw a video this week from Dave Chappelle talking about how the beginning of his career, like the beginning of your career, you spent chasing your influences. And then the second half of your career, you spend running from them to try to find out who you really are. And like, that's where the magic happens. And if you look at a lot of entrepreneurs and when they have these big shifts or just like business people, and they have these big shifts in their life, it happens around like late to middle age, like 40s and 50s. And that's because they really figure out who they actually are as a person and they start to become that person, which allows them to get onto that path we talked about where you're supposed to go. And then it's like a trajectory straight up, So I feel like for a lot of times business owners, specifically when you're hitting that wall and you're just keep hitting the wall, like it's because you got to change, but you got to change you.
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
it doesn't matter how fast you run, you're still going to hit the wall. It doesn't matter what thing you strap onto or whatever tool, tactic, strategy, hack, you name it, you're still going to hit the wall.
Yeah. You know, I think that's a great point because a lot of times, you know, at least for me coming up, it was like the grind culture. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought like, if I did more, I did more, we would become successful. But in reality, like I wasn't doing more to help the business. I was doing more to kind of feed my ego and take the picture of the screen at 2 a.m. and say, oh, I did it. But in reality, that was hurting my business, you know? So
Mhm.
even being able to look at that and say, hey, nothing needs to change. The systems don't need to change, right? That'll be secondary. It's like I needed to change the way that I approach this whole thing. And I think
So,
another really good point you made in there, man, was just they start to become who they want to be. I think another beautiful exercise that I would recommend everyone listening to do is just spend some time and write out to the best of your ability. It will change, it will be variable, but write out who do you want to end up being, you know, years from now. It has my core values and who I want to be 15 years from now, and just try to slowly act as if you're already there.
that's probably the hardest question to answer. I used to always say the hardest question for someone to answer is, what do you want?
Yeah.
But I also think it's, who are you? And can you answer it without anything that describes your physicality or what you do?
Yeah. Especially as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, like, 'cause especially entrepreneur world. Hey, who are you? Oh, I'm a farmer. I'm a business owner. I own this. I run that. Like, no, who are you?
Yeah. And
You
that's a
know,
scary question.
it is. Honestly, I didn't start to dig into that myself and talk about those moments. I remember being in a mastermind probably around 2021, and I was on a coaching call with one of the mentors of the mastermind, and things weren't going well for me. I was stuck. And she just looked at me and she kept saying, Ryan, you are not your business. The struggles you're having in your business are not a reflection of you. And it's so interesting for me now to think about that, because at that time I didn't get it. I didn't know what she's talking about. No clue. But now, like, I understand that so deeply. And I also understand what she saw at that moment, because I probably looked horrible. Like, you could just see it on me that I was, taking on all the stress of the business, but to me, and blaming it against me. So yeah, just like that awareness and really understanding it.
I guess, you know, if I can ask a question out of there, what do you think, and maybe we can jump into this, like,
Yeah.
what do you think was what allowed you to have that buffer between who you were and who the business is?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think the easiest way to explain it. So what allowed that buffer is, I would say, like, kind of what happened for me is back in 2023, after dealing with COVID lockdowns, 2 miscarriages, family cancer diagnoses, all sorts of stuff, this thing broke wide open. And going through that process of basically identifying the voices, who's talking, who's thinking, and coming to this realization of, these are thoughts, but they're not mine. So then who am I? And I think of this video, it's with Jim Carrey, I just saw, and he talked about it after some award show, I believe. And he's like, I woke up one morning and I realized, who is having these thoughts? And then I started to understand that I'm separate from these thoughts, and I am not having these thoughts. I'm witnessing these thoughts. And then he's like, from that moment on, I went down, and he had this deep understanding of self. And he's like, and then immediately, once I understood self, all the pain and suffering just drifted away. And ever since that moment, I've spent my whole life trying to get back to it and bring everyone there with me. And I think that's kind of like a very similar process what I went through, is as I just literally peeled back all those layers and that shield of armor to protect you, and understood exactly who I was, I came to a very deep, profound understanding of what was important. And I've written so much about this, like, for me personally, and I shared this already on the show with a different guest, but I wrote to myself too at one point. A lot of it was around my son, right? So that was a big thing too, is when I finally did have my son, and like the first time I held him in my arms, I broke wide open. And that was the first time in my life I ever experienced the feeling of happiness or joy. I actually felt it. And it was so foreign to me. It was like a burning fire in my chest. And I wrote to myself after that, and I was like, because I said before, like, I got into fitness because I was just trying to find a way to be loved. Like, how do I find worth in myself? So it's like, I thought that getting jacked and ripped would make me happy, so I got ripped. I thought that getting rich would make me happy, so I built a business and I got money. And all along, I told myself that having a child would stop me from being happy, because I couldn't be ripped and rich, and I couldn't have all these things. And then I had you. And I found out that was actually the only thing that would ever make me happy.
Yeah.
And that was like a reflection back. Like, so for me, having a child was a reflection of back to me in my own childhood and understanding what I'd missed from being basically dissociated and understanding the loss I experienced. So for me, it was like going forward, this must change. Otherwise, it would all be for nothing. So I don't know if that answered what you were asking, but that's like the best way I could try to explain of how I came to that understanding of that separation. And that's when I literally, like, I sold my gym business, I killed my coaching business, and building everything over the right way.
No, actually, I love that, man. And, I think even for me, like I related on a lot of parts. But thank you for being so both, on this podcast and just in general, being vulnerable about what is going on. Because like I've told you, those things are very helpful for me. Sometimes you can be aware, but when you feel like you're the only person that's, going through this thing or going through the thing you now become aware of, you're like, oh, there's something wrong with me. So seeing other people that are successful share these things is so vitally important. So if we want to continue to create coaches that are self-aware, that can actually show up for people, entrepreneurs that can show up for their team, I really think it's more people like you, man, more people that are vulnerable with their story and where they're gone and all that to go back to, man. I think the same for me was this past year. I've been really, we're on the path to open up location 2 this year, and I had been like driving it. Everyone else in my mastermind is opening up locations 5, 6, 7, whatever else. And I didn't want to get left behind, right? So I'm driving this thing faster than maybe it needs to be. And, I did a like plant medicine ceremony middle of this year, and I'm laying there looking up, and I just get this message. And the thing was, in my life, I think all these other external things are going to happen. I think I'm going to have a great business. I think I'm going to be very successful in that way, yes. But at the core of it, I just want to be a really good husband and a really good dad. And if I could be those 2 things, then my life was okay. Whether there's huge financial success, whether there's strife along the way, whatever else, as long as I can in myself show up as a good dad and a good husband, the rest of it is the cherry on top. So I think it's kind of been the same in that way too, man.
How was your experience? Because I'm going for my own experience in March.
Oh man, I'll say, I've done so many things for my mental health and my psychology. It really is one of my favorite things to learn about. So I've done a couple, man. I guess I'll share this on here, whatever. But
I'd say I've done psilocybin, I've done MDMA therapy, so I've tried a few things myself, and I imagine where we're going for me and my brother is going to be with ayahuasca.
Oh man, get ready. Yeah, so we'll do a quick tangent on this, but yeah, I did my first like mushroom ceremony in 2022. And it was basically called a cutting the cord ceremony. And it was these things, because we all have cords, right? To like these people in our lives, these events in our lives that we're forever tethered to, and they influence every decision we make because we're trying to correct this thing, make this person proud, spite them, whatever the hell else. So I've done 2 mushroom ceremonies. I've done ayahuasca, which is probably the favorite one. I've learned so much about myself in ayahuasca. And then I did DMT this past year. And from each one of those, I think what really is beautiful is that I'm a very like analytical mind. I get from my spreadsheets being so crazy, right? I'm very, very like analytical and everything. And also because of some fear, I can be rigid. So I like some of the plant medicine because it allows that to be thrown up in the air and me kind of like release back from that.
Yep.
And then I can just have these different ways of thinking, whether that's creatively, whether that's for my life. And so it's been such a beautiful journey. And I'm so thankful for, the lady that's guided me through a lot of these things, because when I did ayahuasca, and I hope your journey is beautiful as well, man, but I learned so much, on the personal side. I realized that me trying to do more to take care of partners or romantic partners or team members or whatever else and not see them fail was from like, I don't know if I protected my sisters enough as a kid. But one of the most beautiful ones actually pertaining to business was I got a message that basically said, the more you try to fight for control, the more you get in the way. So all of these things that I was doing to try to have control of the grip, I need to know everything in my business. I need to control every system. I need to, inside and outside. And if I can't control something, then I might even sabotage it. So at least I have control, or I might even just worry about it. If I can't do anything, I'll just worry. So then I have control. It all went back to control for me. So I got in that message. The more you try to fight for control, the more you're in the way. You need to step back and let things unfold. And then you take that back to how I got started in the industry. I didn't control that.
Hmm.
I got turned down from this fancy, Beverly Hills gym where they train like Russell Wilson, and I was so disappointed. And then I got a job at this like very small boutique little, next to like a fish market, personal training spot. And then the guy had some life experiences. He had a family member pass, and all of a sudden now I'm started in the industry. I can't control that, right?
Hmm.
So many examples along the years that I've been doing this now where it's like, oh, it all made sense. If I step back and allow space, then the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, can get in there and actually guide me where I want to go.
Dude, so you're so right. And then you got me now thinking about some of my own experiences, and like you talk about like things you can never plan happen. And I think of what got me into business. So I graduated from college, and actually I was still in college, and I was living with a girl in Buffalo, New York. We were going to move down south after we graduated. I actually transferred out of my exercise science program at Buffalo, or University of Buffalo. I transferred to Buffalo State to get into this program they had with the U.S. Marshal Service because I was fear that if I graduated, what could I do with my degree besides be a personal trainer? That's not going to get me anywhere. So I did the safe thing, and I went to Buffalo State where I can get this guaranteed job with the U.S. Marshal Service because my dad was a former U.S. Marshal. Make the transfer, program falls through, they cancel it. Now I'm left with a psychology degree. I went from having a double degree in psychology and exercise science to having a single degree in psych. I was like, all right, what are we going to do? Me and my girlfriend are going to move down south. My birthday, so I had to extend my graduation to summer, so I didn't graduate yet. So on my birthday, we go on this vacation. I find out on my birthday that my girlfriend doesn't want to do this plan, and we're basically breaking up. So I literally call a taxi in the middle of the night because there was no Uber then. Took a taxi to the airport, flew home, moved all my stuff back to where I'm from, Utica, New York, from Buffalo. Never spoke.
Shoot.
Yeah, like never spoke to that person again. Moved everything back to Utica. Like, what am I going to do? At the time, I was just drinking, partying, just not in a good place mentally. My buddies are like, "Hey, what do you want to do?" And I was like, "There's only one person I wanted to see, and it was a girl that I had a thing with in high school." So I was like, "I'll go out with you guys tonight, fine." So we go out and we get drunk. I'm walking home in the middle of the night in the street, and I bump into that girl, and I asked her out on a date, and we went on a date a couple of days later, and now, 15 years later, we're married with a kid, and we opened a business and everything there. But like I could have never, like all of those bad things that happened to me are what led to that point. I never would have thought that was what was going to turn into, but you can't.
You can't, man. But I think that is just like, it's just another example of it. I feel like everyone has stories like this. Everyone has these stories, but the two things we don't do is realize how all of these bads, right? Like, at least in my mind, some stuff is just horrible and there is no redeeming factor to it really. But for a lot of the things that happened to me in my life, I'm thankful for them. I'm thankful
Mm-hmm.
for some of my most painful moments ever because now I have that perception, right? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
such a crazy thing to think. Like when we think about feeling joy and whatever, if you didn't have like the pain of that breakup, if you didn't have my pain of going and just being lost, then hey, maybe like I wouldn't have been so called to what I'm doing now. Maybe you 15 years later wouldn't have been with this person you loved. So it is such a beautiful thing to just step back and go, it doesn't always have to be you. That's a real weird thing to say as an entrepreneur that got into this so I can create my own little world or whatever. But it doesn't always have to be me that's in control.
I just think so many things on that is one, if you weren't ever lost and knew what it was like to be lost, you would have never been able to be found. And then also on the other side of it is that I don't think it's necessary, like with entrepreneurship, because you can't control everything, but it's the freedom to try. And I really think that's a big part of, like, we talk about joy or just fulfillment in your career, whatever it is one is the freedom to decide and choose what you're doing and try to go in after it. And also the freedom to express who you actually are and what you truly think. And when you suppress both of those is when you end up in a really dark place, which is why it's so important to identify who you are, find that path. And it might not look at all what you think it's going to be. As you're the example right there of like, didn't think it was going to end up in this spot, but I just kept doing what I needed to do each step of the way and
Yeah.
discovering more about yourself. And man, look what happened.
Yeah, man. I think that's a great point right there too, is you don't need to know like today who you want to be, but it definitely should be floating around in there, right? Like 4 years ago, I had no clue who I wanted to be. And I think that's also just part of it,
Mhm.
right? You just show up and you have this thing floating in the background. How do I want to show up? Who's the person I want to be? And you go through experiences that cement these things. Hey, I did this thing. That felt really good. That's in alignment with who I want to be. Okay, cool. Now that's one of my core values. That's one of the things that I want to make sure I always hold on to. So for people listening as well, one of the most important things you can do is start to find out who you want to be and start to live into that. But even if you don't know that today, that's okay. It is not like a final stamp. It is something you put out there. A good buddy of mine says like, you don't need to follow, the map quest. You don't need to have turn left here. You just need a compass that's set to a direction. And if you keep stepping that direction, you might fall off course, you might have a detour, but you're going to end up where you need to be. And I think that's such a big thing is just find your direction and go. There are, like we said so many times on this podcast, there is no failure. There is absolutely no failure, but stopping and then, or you just die. And that's not even failure, right? So you just keep moving forward. That is the only thing you need to do is stack up losses, stack up wins, and all of it are lessons that make you greater. And I think that's really the biggest thing I want to kind of like share on here as well, man, is just reframing that. There's no need for procrastination when you understand that it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. The only thing that matters is that I move forward.
I think a really great point with that too is just like that distinction between, like you said, you don't have to know who you want to be, but you have to actively be trying to look for it. Like that's where the doing comes in. Like, and keep moving forward is like, you might not know it, but each step of the way, you're going to unpeel layers. And like we just talked about plant medicine. Well, each time you go through an experience, you peel back different layers and you learn new different things and you have different perspectives on it, and it's all part of that process, which I think is ultimately like the journey of life is how do we figure out who you are?
When I look at this whole entrepreneur thing, the thing that excites, at least me, I know it's different for every person, but for me, is just who I have to become in the process. That has been the most beautiful part of this whole journey. I have changed so much since I started my business in a way that I'm that I can't say for sure, but I don't think I would have had the amount of pressure and stress and everything else that comes with entrepreneurship that would have caused me to have to change in that way. And I'm so thankful for it. I'm
Yeah.
not Marcus today that shows up for, my girlfriend, my friends, the people I care about. I can't be who I am today on a personal level without having this beautiful journey of losing coaches, bank accounts empty, sleepless nights, coaching from 5 to 11 and 4 to 8, all of these things, bad decisions, lost clients, they all in the grand scheme of things have made me greater. And I'm so, so thankful for that.
Dude, I got to show you after this. I put together a tool, I call it the leadership scale of consciousness. So have you read David Hawkins' stuff?
Is that like letting go?
Letting go, yeah. He talks about that map of consciousness.
Yeah.
So what I did is I overlaid that map of consciousness into leadership styles and basically the entrepreneurial journey. And what you'll find, and when you look at it, I'll show you, like, it maps perfectly. Like the pathway of elevating your consciousness or just becoming your true self or self-actualization, whatever you want to call it, it literally mirrors the entrepreneurial journey. So like to your point of personal development, if you want to achieve new levels in business, the only way to do that is to achieve new levels in you. And by nature of going through the process of growing you, your business will grow and vice versa. It's like this beautiful synchronicity between the two. And I think that's part of the unique aspect of being an entrepreneur is you're put in these, again, unique circumstances with unique pressures and unique environments with unique people that force you comfortably, I say force you, to make these changes because otherwise you have to get out. You can't stay in it.
That is the thing. It's like you either grow or it dies.
Yeah.
And there's a big pressure on that. Man, I gotta say, in the moment, it sucks. But when you look back, you'll be so thankful that you took every chance, that you had every failure, even the things that like you're real disappointed in. I look back and I'm so thankful, man. Like it's kind of like
it's never as bad as you think it is either.
Oh, not at all. Not at all.
Whether it's the thing that you're thinking about in the future that you're building up as being a scary thing, or it's the thing from the past, once you actually look at it and go deep into it, you realize that it wasn't or isn't as scary as you made it out to be.
I forget who asked the set of questions, but just the what's the worst that can happen and can I live with that? And just asking yourself that over and over. Because for me, that'll go into things that are silly, like I'm writing an email for February and I'm like, oh my God, is this email going to be good enough? And I'm like, what's the worst that can happen? No, somebody says, you can suck at writing. Okay, can I live with that? Yeah, it wouldn't be the first time.
Yeah.
And the business is still doing well, so
And,
it's
and
so
honestly, like, that's how quickly you can move past some of those things. So one of the things I talk about on the show, this whole idea of the lighthouse, is that you're going to be basically a pillar for your team, your family, yourself, and you're standing tall, always shining a light forward. What has there been for you, kind of like a lighthouse in your life? Something like maybe it's a resource you go to, it's a person that you've been able to go back to, but someone who's always there as you've gone through this journey. Is there anything like that that comes up for you?
I think I've been very blessed. I used to suck at asking for help because it felt scary and vulnerable. Oh my God, they'll know that I'm not perfect. Who cares? So I think along this way, like there's been so many pieces of my journey that I'll focus on. One is, my partner. Like I really do think having someone that's there with you, supportive, that is also, she kind of balances me out. I can be way too go, 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 and she'll kind of slow that down some, and I love it. So I think really like having a solid partner is like a big piece of it for me. The other one is having a lot of friends in the industry. That's why I think masterminds are so helpful. If nothing else, it's because you can make these decisions. It takes the shame off of mistakes and decisions because you realize everybody has mistakes and everyone has made bad decisions. Like you said, it's never as bad as you think. But when you're going through this entrepreneurial journey in this like little echo chamber of yourself, you feel like you're doing so much worse than you really are. So having a mastermind, I talk to my buddies from a mastermind like every day, hey man, I'm about to do this price raise email, can you look over it real quick? I'm feeling nervous. They'll shoot me stuff. We'll have questions about our team and just feeling supported in that journey. I think that's definitely been a lighthouse for me. And then if we're being real too, I think I would say the other two are really therapy and books. My therapist, she's just a rock. I'll leave it there. But a lot of the books I've gone through, I think it's another thing of one of the best things when we talk about becoming a self-aware leader is being able to take the shame or the, oh my God, it's only me. Like they call it, I forget the word, but it's like terminal uniqueness, right? Oh my God, there's something so wrong with me and just me that it can never be fixed and that blah, blah, blah. And what actually happens is you talk to these other people and you even go through books if you're not comfortable talking to people or if you don't have, a group or people you can confide in those ways. Because I'll read something like, David Hawkins' Letting Go or oh man, like The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And I'm like, oh, this is the exact thought that I was having over and over and over and over. And now like somebody's put language to it. And I know it's not just me because there's a whole book. And because it's not just me, I can do something about it, right? We talk about those stages. I get out of apathy, right? When we're stuck in this, there is something wrong with me here. I'm in apathy because I can't change me here. But when I realize, oh, it's just like where I'm at right now,
Yeah.
I don't have to be apathetic. I can do something about it. And I think that's like a powerful, powerful place. So
I look back at my journal and like I knew something was going on with me mentally for a long time. If you look at my journal, like I wrote about it for a very long time, but I was too afraid to look into it because I thought that there was like wrong with me. I'm bad. This is horrible. And then once I actually figured out what was going on and understand it and understood everything, I still couldn't even speak it. But I couldn't speak the word dissociation because that would be tied to like multiple personality, which would be tied to like dissociative identity, which means I'm crazy. Like, and you go down this rabbit hole. And again, as I continue to learn, like I think that's why knowledge and reading is so important to like educate yourself on not just yourself, but how the body works, how the mind works. Because the more that I learned and I've dove into this and like kind of like the epiphany I came to is that it's not anything that's different than me. The only thing that's different is I had the opportunity to meet them.
Yeah.
But we all have these parts of ourselves. So if everyone became aware enough to understand that, you could tap into it. And when you tap into those parts is when you actually find you.
I think that's a beautiful point too, because like finding you doesn't mean getting rid of those parts either.
No, it's
You know,
bringing them together.
exactly, right? And being able to look at, for me, one of the examples is, and I'm interested to hear like if some of these have popped up for you as well, but for me, one is I am one of the hardest working people that I know, right? Like I will work late, and sometimes I'm lazy as hell and I won't get off the couch all day on Saturday. I will do absolutely nothing. Right. And
Mhm.
these things used to be at like odds with each other, where it was like I was either in this mode of wake up at 5, blah, 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 go to bed, all that, or I was in this page of, oh, you're so lazy, you're never going to be successful. And so now it's and these things can coexist with each other. And I think when you meet those two sides of yourself, because they're both you, they're both calling for some reason, you can find like they can almost all live in harmony. You're just not letting it. And then you're causing friction that doesn't need to be there. When I need to be hardworking Marcus, I'm locked in. When I need to just chill out and just watch playoff football, I can do that now in a way that I couldn't before.
But tell me actually if this resonates with you, because this is something I wrote, and I feel like this is kind of along the same lines. So if you want to heal yourself as an individual, especially as a guy, find your inner child and let him out and play.
Yeah.
Find the shadow and tell them that you love them. Find your monster and make friends with them. Because if you don't stop and tell your shadow you love them, it will never stop chasing you. If you don't let your child out to play with them, they'll forever try to keep you inside with them. And if you don't befriend the monster you created to protect you, it will eventually turn on you and destroy you. And I think of that like through those different parts of yourself, as especially I feel like, again, men getting into the entrepreneur roles, you have to become a leader of power and authority and alpha, which means you can't have any sort of weakness, which means emotion. And you can't be too fun and playful like a child. You got to be serious and you got to be aggressive, which is not the case.
It's so funny because I've had all three of those, like, and just distinctly like that, like show up for me,
Mhm.
along the journey. Like I say, the last 2 years has been so transformative. And a lot of that started where my therapy, and I also will say, like, as a black dude who grew up in football, like all of this stuff seems so woo-woo to me at the beginning, right? Like
Mhm.
meditation and inner child, but it's changed my life, right? So, the inner child piece of just going inside and be like, all right, little Marcus, like, what's going on? Hey, like I feel a disturbance. Like, let me check in. I need your help, and just spending that time. And even for the shadow, when I did ayahuasca, that's when I really learned because I kept being called to look at this thing. And until I did, like the images that I was seeing kept getting worse and like more graphic. And then I finally like let go and I saw this piece and it all went away. And so I think that's also a huge part. Like when we don't have acceptance for these pieces of ourselves that society has told us are ugly or whatever else, they get louder and louder and louder until we can't function. So I think all of these things that you're mentioning, yeah, like it's so you can have a more successful business. But at the end of the day, like I don't think a lot of people realize your life can be so much less stressful than it currently is, so much less friction than it currently does. There will never be no friction. There will never be no problems. It wouldn't be fun that way. I feel like there's so many things that by just those three statements that you put there right there, if people just really took some time to just try to spend time with all three of those, so much more friction in life would be gone. And that's when you can just enjoy it. And that's
Mhm.
what we're here for, to just enjoy all pieces of this thing, happy or sad. So I love that, man. That's
Dude,
actually,
so good.
yeah.
I'm so happy you came on today because this is so great. I love talking about this stuff, and you've got such a great familiarity with it and understanding. So it's nice to be able to go back and forth and really dig into some of the deeper aspects of, how do you make these changes? Because again, like you said, you were thinking of it from your background as a little too woo-woo. Same thing. I come from a rural town in upstate New York, like. Like the idea of like of therapy, like no way, like no, like so. Um, it's just again like letting others know like there's no shame in any of that. Like honestly, I think it's more strength than anything to be able to go through this because it sucks, but it's so beautiful on the other end of it too. So I don't want to make it seem bad, like don't do it, but like honestly, it's one of the best experiences that you can do for yourself and those around you, is to make those changes.
Yeah. And I think too, like, just to kind of cement that even further, like really for people listening right now, just ask yourself, which is actually harder? Which requires more strength? To do this thing that feels uncomfortable and you have to push through and go and look at, oh my God, I have to look at this inner child, or I have to look at myself, or to just continue with like the status quo of what you're at right now, which, may be like, oh, I'm living life rougher and, I'm no emotions. It's like, oh, it's actually harder to open up. Like, this is easy. This is what Marcus did for years and years and years. It was cracking that thing open, which was harder. And that's where the real strength is. So
100%, man. We talked about books as we wrap things up here. What would be, let's just say, your top book or top resource that you'd recommend for someone to check out for digging more into self-awareness, becoming a self-aware leader, just any of the psychology stuff we talked about?
Yeah, I think the best book is The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. I give that to anytime I've given someone a promotion to like a higher, pay scale, bigger position in the company, I'll have them read that book, because what the book basically talks about is we all have like a ceiling that we start off with. And anytime that you get close to that, like let's say you start to become more successful, you find love, you find whatever else. And if that goes above the ceiling that you have for yourself, there will be like a cognitive dissonance where you'll go, oh, wait, I feel up here, but my ceiling is here. And you'll sabotage to bring it back down. And that still happens to me today. We had a great year in 2024. And when I looked at the numbers, I freaked out and I didn't like write the emails the first week. But in the past, that would have been way worse. So I think that book gives so much language to it of just, hey, like you are upper limiting. You are here. You're feeling better in your life. And if something starts to go wrong, you get sick, you get injured, you might have to ask yourself like, oh, am I bringing myself back down because up here feels scary, especially prolonged? So that's my favorite book right now, or actually ever.
Nice. I'll make sure that I start to gift that one as well, because I think that's a great one. Like you said, for people who are getting in that new role, like you're breaking past that limit. Well, thank you, dude, so much for coming on the show today. Where can everyone find you? If you guys want to learn more about Marcus and what he does, where can people find you? Yeah,
man. So I'm on Instagram mostly. I post the most on there, but it's Marcus_McDuffie. So just my name. But yeah, if you have any questions about things or you want to chat more about you as you kind of step into that journey of looking more into yourself and becoming a self-aware leader, feel free to shoot me a voice note, shoot me a text. I always love talking about it. So I'm glad to be on here as well, man.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for joining the show. And for everyone listening, make sure to tune in to the next episode of The Lighthouse.
Hey, thanks so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to the show. And if you are a small business owner and you are ready to unlock your true leadership potential, scale your profits, and build a business that actually thrives without you, here are 3 ways that I can help. Number 1, take the What Type of Leader Are You quiz. I'll leave it in the show notes. It's going to give you some great insights into the patterns that are basically running your leadership style and negatively impacting you and your team. The second way is the Lighthouse Leader Program. This is a intensive program for you to develop your leadership skills, remove the mental blocks that have been holding you back, and take you and your business to the next level. If you want to learn more about it, find me on Instagram, Ryan.Lighthouse. Shoot me a DM that says Lighthouse Leader and we can talk details. And finally, the last way would be to work with me privately. I do mentor small business owners and their teams to grow their business and remove the owner from the day-to-day operations. And if you want to learn how to do that, same thing. Go on Instagram, find me Ryan.Lighthouse, send me a DM that says mentorship. We can talk about the details of one-on-one mentorship and how I can come in and help work with you and your team. But thank you again for listening to the show, and stay tuned for next episode.